The air in the lawyer's office was cold enough to hang meat. I sat on the edge of a stiff leather chair, my second-hand dress feeling thin and insubstantial, while across from me, my older brother, Jeremy, practically radiated warmth and expensive cologne. He was already looking at his phone, a faint, satisfied smile playing on his lips. We were there for the reading of our grandfather's will. Grandpa Arlo, a self-made man with a gruff exterior, and I'd always believed, a secretly soft heart, especially for his slightly awkward, bookish granddaughter. The lawyer, Mr. Braithwaite, cleared his throat, his spectacles perched on the end of his nose. "To my grandson, Jeremy Thorne," he began, his voice devoid of any sentiment, "I leave the entirety of my estate, including the primary residence in Southampton, the portfolio of stocks and bonds, the vintage car collection, and the remaining business assets. The total valuation is approximately $47 million. A soft, almost imperceptible sigh of contentment escaped Jeremy. He didn't look at me. He'd expected this. Everyone had. Jeremy was the heir apparent, the one who'd gone into the family business, or at least its boardrooms, who played golf with the right people, who understood the language of money. I was the afterthought, the artsy one who taught literature at a struggling community college and lived in a Brooklyn walk-up filled with rescued plants and too many books. Mr. Braithwaite adjusted his glasses and turned a page. The paper crackled in the silent, frosty room. "And to my granddaughter, Eleanor Thorne," he said, his eyes finally flicking to me. I straightened my spine, a foolish hope, that tiny, stubborn seedling pushing through the concrete of reality. Perhaps a trust fund, a small property, something that said, "I see you too." I leave the sum of $50 to be paid in cash. The words didn't compute at first. They bounced off the frozen surface of my mind. $50. The number hung in the air, absurd and cruel. Jeremy's head snapped up, his brow furrowed not in sympathy, but in confusion, as if trying to solve a minor puzzle. Humiliation, hot and sharp, flooded my veins, followed swiftly by a grief so profound it stole my breath. This wasn't about the money. It was a message, carved in stone and delivered posthumously. You are worth less than a decent dinner out. There is, however, a condition for Jeremy, the lawyer continued, as if he hadn't just atomized my heart. The bequest is contingent upon him personally delivering the $50 sum to Eleanor in cash, at the bank where Mr. Thorne held his primary accounts, the First Mercantile Trust on Fifth Avenue. Jeremy shrugged, the confusion clearing. A petty, performative task from a sentimental old man, an errand. "Of course," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "No problem." I said nothing. I couldn't. The weight of the dismissal was physical, pressing me into the cheap leather. $50. It was the cost of a textbook, a week's groceries if I stretched it. It was the price Grandpa Arlo had put on a lifetime of my love, of my quiet attempts to connect with him through the poetry he pretended to hate, of the afternoons spent listening to his rambling stories while Jeremy was out closing deals. The meeting ended. Jeremy offered me a ride in his Tesla, a gesture that felt like salt in the wound. "Ellie, look, I'm sure he didn't mean," he started, but I just shook my head, muttering something about needing air. I walked for hours, through streets that blurred into a smear of gray and noise. The injustice of it was a live wire in my chest. $47 million for him, $50 for me. It was so blatant, so cartoonishly cruel, it circled back from heartbreaking to suspicious. Grandpa Arlo was many things, demanding, traditional, stubborn, but he wasn't stupid, and he'd never been pointlessly cruel. 2 days later, I stood in the vaulted marble lobby of the First Mercantile Trust, a temple to old money. Jeremy was already there, looking impatient. He pulled a crisp $50 bill from his monogrammed money clip. "Here," he said, handing it over like he was tipping a valet. "Grandpa's last wish." The transaction felt dirty. I took the bill, the paper feeling flimsy and insignificant. This was my inheritance. A single, lonely portrait of Ulysses S. Grant. As my fingers closed around it, a bank manager in an impeccably tailored suit appeared at our elbows. He'd been observing from a discreet distance. "Mr. Thorne, Ms. Thorne, my name is Mr. Henderson. My deepest condolences on your loss." His voice was a low, respectful murmur. "If you'll both come with me for just a moment to finalize the estate's administrative items." "It will only take a minute," Jeremy sighed, checking his Patek Philippe. "Make it quick, Henderson. I have a closing at 1. "Of course, sir." "Right this way." He led us past the tellers, through a wooden door marked private, and into a plush, windowless office. The door clicked shut with a sound of finality. Mr. Henderson didn't sit behind the large oak desk. Instead, he walked calmly to the wall behind it, pressed a panel that I would have never noticed, and a small, sleek safe, unlike the big metal boxes in the vault, opened with a whisper. He pulled out a single, sealed, legal-sized envelope, yellowed with age. On the front, in Grandpa Arlo's familiar, forceful script, it read, "For Eleanor upon receipt of the 50. My heart stuttered. Jeremy took a step forward. "What is this?" "A supplementary instruction from your grandfather, held in our custodial care," Mr. Henderson said, handing the envelope to me. His hands were perfectly steady. With trembling fingers, I broke the brittle seal. Inside was a single, heavy key, tarnished with age, and a letter. I unfolded the paper, Grandpa's voice rising from the ink in stern, uncompromising lines. "Ellie, if you're reading this, it means Jeremy has just handed you that $50 with the smug satisfaction of a man who believes he's won the lottery. And he has, a lottery of zeros and commas that will rot his soul. I gave him the money because that's all he ever wanted, all he ever valued. He sees wealth as a score. He never saw me, but you did. You saw the old man who loved Robert Frost and hated the quiet. You saw the cost of the empire I built, etched in the lines on my face. The money I made came at a price I decided long ago I would not pass on to you. I will not burden you with the weight of those millions, the vultures it attracts, the cage it becomes. Instead, I give you the lock. That key opens safe deposit box 147 in this bank. It is not an inheritance of money, but of truth. It contains the origin of our family's wealth. It is not a pretty story, Ellie. It is a hard, dark thing. What you do with this truth is your choice, and yours alone. It is your real inheritance, the power of knowing, and the freedom to choose what comes next. The $50 was the test. Jeremy passed it by, seeing exactly what I knew he'd see, a pittance. You passed it by accepting it, by showing up, by being the person I knew you to be, someone who values more than a balance sheet. I am so sorry for the hurt this will cause. But I had to know you were the one strong enough to carry the key. Love always, Grandpa Arlo. Tears streamed down my face, hot and silent. The hurt transformed, not disappearing, but melting into a river of understanding and overwhelming, bittersweet love. He had seen me. He'd seen me clearer than anyone. Jeremy snatched the letter from my hand. His eyes scanned it, his face cycling from confusion to dawning, furious comprehension. What origin? What truth? What is this, some dramatic nonsense? He wheeled on Henderson. I want to see that box. Now, as the primary heir, I have a right. Mr. Henderson's demeanor changed. The polite mask dropped. His eyes, sharp and cool, met Jeremy's. No, Mr. Thorne, you do not. The instructions are explicit and legally ironclad. The contents of box 147 are for Eleanor Thorne's eyes only. They are not part of the estate you inherited. They are a separate bequest, conditional upon the delivery of the $50, which has been satisfied. Jeremy's face flushed a deep, dangerous red. The entitled billionaire who had, minutes ago, owned the world was being told no by a bank manager. It was an existential shock. This is outrageous. I'll sue this bank into the ground. I'll have your job, that's my property. It is not, Henderson said calmly. Then, without another word, he turned and pressed a small, recessed button under the lip of his desk. A silent alarm. Within 60 seconds, the door to the office burst open. 2 uniformed NYPD officers stood there, hands resting on their sidearms. My breath caught in my throat. Officers, Mr. Henderson said, his voice a model of calm authority. "This man is causing a disturbance and making violent threats. He is trespassing in a secured area and refusing to leave. I am requesting he be removed from the premises immediately." Jeremy spluttered, apoplectic. "You can't be serious. This is my grandfather's bank." "You are disrupting the operation of a federal financial institution," one of the officers said, stepping forward, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Sir, you need to come with us." Now, the sight of my brother, the newly minted multimillionaire, being escorted out of the bank by 2 police officers, his shouts of protest echoing in the marble hall, was so surreal I almost pinched myself. The last I saw of him was a flash of his furious, bewildered face as the heavy glass doors closed behind him. The silence in the office was deafening. Mr. Henderson let out a long, slow breath. "My apologies for the drama, Ms. Thorne. Your grandfather anticipated Mr. Jeremy's reaction. The instructions were very detailed." He gestured to the key in my hand. "Would you like to view the box now?" Wordlessly, I nodded. He led me down into the heart of the bank, past the main vault, to a quieter, older corridor lined with small, numbered brass doors. He used a master key, I used mine. The box slid out, heavier than I expected. Inside, there were no stock certificates, no deeds, no gold. There was a bundle of old, cloth-bound ledgers, a stack of faded photographs, and a smaller, older box made of tin. With shaking hands, I opened the first ledger. It was my great-grandfather's handwriting, detailing transactions from the 1920s. But these weren't stock trades or business deals. They were shipments, routes, payments to officials, code names for products. It was a meticulous record of bootlegging during Prohibition. The photographs confirmed it. My great-grandfather, a man I'd only seen in a formal portrait over the fireplace, standing with known mobsters, smiling beside trucks loaded with barrels. The Thorne family fortune, the foundation of Grandpa Arlo's empire, wasn't built on savvy investments or honest enterprise. It was built on rum-running, corruption, and blood money. The tin box held the final piece, letters between my great-grandfather and grandfather. Anguished, desperate letters from my grandfather as a young man, pleading with his father to go legitimate, terrified of the violence, the moral decay. His father's replies were cold, pragmatic. "This is the world. This is how wealth is built. We are providing a service." Grandpa Arlo had spent his life trying to cleanse the money, to build a legitimate empire atop the rotten foundation. He'd succeeded in the eyes of the world. But he'd never escaped the guilt, the shame of the origin. The millions he left to Jeremy were the laundered, polished, clean version of that blood money, and he couldn't bear to give it to me. He'd given me the poison instead of the gilded pill. He'd given me the truth. I sat in that sterile viewing room for an hour, crying for the burden he'd carried, for the terrible choice he'd made, for the profound and painful love his strange bequest represented. He hadn't disinherited me, he had entrusted me with his soul. I left the bank a different person. Jeremy's lawyers bombarded me with threats, but they were empty. The structures Grandpa Arlo had put in place were unassailable. Jeremy got the fortune, but he also got the gilded cage, forever wondering about the secret that eluded him, forever defined by the money he coveted. The $50 bill, I framed it. It hangs on my wall, not as a symbol of rejection, but as a key in its own right. A key to a truth that set me free. I used a small, separate cash bequest from another, smaller envelope Henderson gave me that day. Enough to pay off my student loans and buy a little time, to write the book I'd always dreamed of. It wasn't about my family. It was about the quiet lives that happen in the shadow of great, noisy fortunes. It found a publisher. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the weight of that truth. I could expose it all, burn the Thorne legacy to the ground, or I could lock it away forever. That choice, Grandpa Arlo said, was my real inheritance. For now, I hold it. I understand it. And I walk through my life in my Brooklyn walk-up, surrounded by my books and my plants, feeling richer than my brother could ever imagine. He has the millions, but I have the key. And in the end, I know which one of us Grandpa Arlo believed was truly wealthy. Thanks for diving into Eleanor's story with me. If you found yourself gripped by the weight of a secret inheritance and the true cost of family legacies, then you've got a page-turner's heart. Don't forget to subscribe for more tales where ordinary lives collide with extraordinary choices, where the past never stays buried, and where the smallest key can open the heaviest door. Hit that bell so you never miss a story. Until next time, keep wondering what's locked away in the quiet places.